Hey, welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. It is episode number 720, being recorded on April 26, 2023. And for tonight, and tonight only, I'm your host, Josh Walrath.
I'm the guy beside him, Jeremy Hellstrom.
We're going around reverse, what is it called? Counterclockwise. I'm Sebastian P.
No, it's actually clockwise.
I'm going to be the guy above him and the guy next to him the other way. And I'm going to be Brett tonight. I occasionally do that.
So even though we're being contrapositive, look that one up. You can support this site and these numbskulls and the distribution by heading over to patreon.com/PCPer and becoming a patron. Patron of the arts, if this is what you want to call art. Nobody calls this art. This is like an hour, maybe two, of mind-numbingly boring people.
Hey,
except for Sebastian.
There's banter. People like the banter. It's performance.
There's the fumbling,
like the banter,
the stumbling, the what are you talking about?
Look, some people throw buckets of paint against walls, and they call that art.
True. Well, Jackson Pollock used to do. Never mind. We don't want to.
All right.
You don't want to get into his orifice.
We do not have a standout Patreon person, which makes me sad because, I was feeling a little lonely, I was feeling a little down, and I was getting lots of low energy right before the show. And I thought, I could say something nice and funny and interesting about the person who ups their thing on Patreon. But guess what? No such thing this week. Be better.
At least you had a burger to comfort you.
This is true. And speaking of which, I did have a burger, and I swear to goodness, because this came directly from Wisconsin. And if you're from Wisconsin, then you'll say Wisconsin. Maybe.
Wait, you're talking about Culver's?
Are you sure? Are you sure that's how they say it? No, this is
Wisconsin. Maybe. I know somebody who's right next door, but is separated by a Great Lake, which I think is kind of a mediocre lake.
Not a superior one?
No. Nope, not at all. But anyway, let's see what I ate today. This is called Curd is the Word. And the curd is the word is 2 beef patties topped with homemade beer cheese, buttermilk battered cheese curds, which you see at the top there, and garlic Dijon mustard. And when you first think of this, you think, wow, that's cheese curds and beer cheese? Let me tell you something, people. It all worked. And you know what? The magic formula was the garlic Dijon mustard. It brought it all together. It wasn't too creamy, like, when you're biting something and suddenly your mouth is just coated with fat. Now that mustard just cut right through it. Felt great. Good mouthfeel. Excellent taste. Would recommend, but I'm going to have to see my cardiologist next week. So if you haven't noticed, Sebastian's not feeling great. He's a little congested. He talks like this.
It's just mostly that my voice is more annoying than usual, and
it does have a more nasally quality.
Yeah, nobody wants to nasal this for an hour.
It is a bit nasally.
Yeah. But if you get into ASMR, is that ASCI?
I
can't remember.
ASMR.
ASMR is the people who do the optics for litho.
Yeah, those
ASMR.
are expensive machines, Josh, as you well know.
Yes,
they sure are. But you know what? Your voice is priceless.
Right.
Speaking of lithography, we may have a Ryzen 7000 problem.
Ooh.
So apparently, they're burning up. I mean, not a huge amount, percentage-wise, but enough to make people think twice about doing things with their new Ryzen 7000 chips. If you see from the picture, and I will describe it to you for those who are seeing impaired, otherwise listening to our podcast over whatever podcast medium, we've got a chip laying on its back, and there are two very significant bubbles from the organic substrate caused by a sudden massive increase in voltage and heat. And if you look on the left-hand side, you will see the LGA array, and there is a large, significant charred portion of
You ain't going
this.
to buff that out.
It also looks like it might be a divot there, Josh. Like you could set like you could set a golf ball into it, and it would be held reasonably securely.
There are some theories about what's going on. It really looks like it's only affecting the 7000X3D processors with 3D V cache. Voltage is being pulled up at a rate that is unsustainable. There are BIOS fixes out. It is not entirely sure if those BIOS fixes are actually going to fix it, which is a little concerning.
My gut reaction was to blame overvoltage tuners, overclocking, tweakers, and things like that.
These
but what
are
you're
people
saying
who were
is
just
out
running
of the box
Expo profile.
No, but it was just the Expo profile was enough to do it on
Yes.
some of the boards. And I think it was Guru 3D that I was reading that sort of said that it's definitely not a direct quote, but some motherboard vendors have found ways around the voltage limits that AMD recommended or set to give you better overclocking performance, of course, but didn't realize that, with the X3Ds especially, that's not going to lead to a good outcome. So they're sort of saying, and the motherboard manufacturers sort of bypassed a cap they shouldn't have. But at the same time, AMD is being really good and saying, hey, if you've had this happen, contact customer support, and from the sounds of it, you're going to get a new chip.
It's kind of interesting. And I mean, you got to think about, what's QA QC in development of this from AMD? What kind of leeway are they allowing their partners? Because again, they're smaller than Intel, and so they can't bring the hammer down on people who are, like, hey, we're going to do Expo memory, but we're going to use lower quality chips. And so to get to these figures, we're going to have X amount of voltage. And AMD is probably going to be like, that may be out of spec. We haven't tested for it, but knock yourself out because we're still only at 25%, CPU market share. Yeah. And, the 7000 series is supposed to kind of help, propel them, especially the X3D, into the next level. And now we're kind of seeing this stuff. So do you want to read the AMD statement, Sebastian?
Let's pull it back up here on screen. So the official AMD statement, this is being published in various outlets. This is a non-tech I have pulled up. Quote, we are aware of a limited number of reports online claiming that excess voltage while overclocking may have damaged the motherboard socket and pin pads. We are actively investigating the situation and are working with our ODM partners to ensure voltages applied to Ryzen 7000 X3D CPUs via motherboard BIOS settings are within product specifications. Anyone whose CPU may have been impacted by this issue should contact AMD customer support. And I don't even want to look at the pads on my 7950X and X3D because I have been consistently running those with 1.35 or higher volts on the DDR5.
Well, they're probably welded together by now, so have fun taking that out. No,
you've now
it
got
shouldn't be. I mean, it's. I mean, you're going to get, if any kind of manufacturing, you're going to get some defects, and it just so happens that this probably pushes a significant number of those defects into the failure category. And so it's going to be interesting to see more investigation here about what happens. And you know what? It's going to it's going to push more people. There's like, why do I want to invest in this when AM4 is out there? It's inexpensive, and you can now buy 64 gigs of 3600 memory for $110.
I could not believe that the other day. It's well under $150 now for 64 gigs of fast DDR4.
Yeah.
Stay on AM4.
And I mean, you get a 5800 X3D and 64 gigs of memory, and I mean you're set for 1440p and 4K gaming for whatever card you have for years ahead. So it's not great for AMD, obviously. And I mean, they were very aggressive in pushing the 7000 series out the door. And, kudos to them for doing that. I mean, the chip people were able to hit all their marks, all the deadlines. It's just AMD and platforms. I mean, platforms are hard because you have to support a tremendous amount of third-party products all on that same platform and all have it work supposedly seamlessly. Yes, we have standards like PCIe 4.0, PCIe 5.0, but invariably things happen. And so stuff may not work as planned across entire ecosystems of motherboards and architectures.
So investigating the issue is Hardware Busters, who had this, somebody in our Discord posted this earlier, and it's very interesting because they're looking at direct power, like inline power monitoring from the power supply to the motherboard and looking at the kind of behavior that different Ryzen processors exhibit. And some of the numbers are pretty crazy. Here's a 7800X 3D. Idle power consumption on average is only 29.364 watts, but they were what they call idle peaks. In this case, it was 53 watts. Well, you move up to a 7950X 3D. Idle peak, 130 watts.
The whole 7900 series suffers from 100 watt plus idle peaks.
So I feel like there is definitely room for, here's another one, 100 plus
109
watt idle peaks on the 7900X. And this is unloaded. He said that I think it said processor utilization was at 5.12% for the 109 watt peak with the 7900X. And it was only at 3.53% utilization when the 7950X 3D hit 130 watts, supposedly at idle. So it does seem like there are some odd kind of voltage and power regulation issues with these. And those burned out boards were actually apparently dead chips sitting at idle that were continuing to heat up and heat up and heat up until you saw the damage to the pads, the damage to the socket underneath. Those are completely dead. They were...
AMD stepped up to say, hey, contact us. We don't know about the motherboard vendors yet.
Maybe when the dust clears, it'll be okay. Ryzen 7000.
Well, here's the thing.
But
you know what those pins are. If you take the time and go through the documentation, you know what the pins are. Yes. AMD knows what those pins are. So it's going to be, it is going to be fascinating to see how they fix this, or if there need to be other motherboard revisions to be able to fix this problem. I don't know.
Well, Josh, we thanks to Igor's lab, we have an analysis of the pad, and he can identify exactly what those pins do. The affected contacts supply the CPU with the VDDCR. Now,
so core power.
Yeah, unfortunately, when you adjust memory overclocking, like when you adjust voltage, I'm overvolting the SoC inside the processor. So it seems like there is a design problem here. And I think that the answer is obvious because we've seen the BIOS updates. What do? They limit that to 1.3 volts.
I wonder if it's a physical locking of voltages or if it's just programming, low-level microcode, firmware.
Just adding in a quick update here. Since we recorded our podcast, there have, of course, been updates to this continuing story, and here's one from videocards.com. AMD has seemingly solved the problem of burning Ryzen 7000 CPUs. The just released AGESA firmware for AMD 600 series motherboards will limit the SoC voltage to 1.3 volts. This means AMD acknowledges that the root issue was the SoC voltage going higher than AMD intended for their CPUs. We have root caused the issue and have already distributed a new AGESA that puts measures in place on certain power rails on AM5 motherboards to prevent the CPU from operating beyond its specification limits, including a cap on SoC voltage at 1.3 volts. None of these changes affect the ability of our Ryzen 7000 series processors to overclock memory using Expo or XMP kits or boost performance using PBO technology.
thus alleviating any concerns that I may have had or anyone may have had about memory overclocking with the limited SoC voltage.
AMD introduced the Ryzen Z1 Series. So these are the super next generation APUs from AMD. It's the Ryzen Z1 and the Ryzen Z1 Extreme. Full native 1080p performance across a wide variety of applications, all aimed at the handheld market. These are first going to be seen in the Asus ROG Ally and possibly others, but basically it's an 8-core, 16-thread, 12 RDNA 3 core, 24 meg cache processor, SoC.
Look at those flops.
8.6 teraflops. Now, whether or not it actually reaches that, that's one question, but
well, listen, that's an engineering projection if you read the very fine print here, but I have every confidence that it'll be very close.
Well, you know how those work out.
They do have a lot of compute on that chip, and you can't argue about that. We don't know the speeds and feeds, but we do know, in theory, it should be a pretty heavy-duty little SoC that can fit in your hand and play games. The Ryzen Z1 is a cut-down version with 6 cores, 12 threads. And this is all Zen 4 processors, 4 RDNA 3 graphics cores. So 1/3 of the performance there of the Z1 Extreme, 22 megs of cache, and it's down to 2.8 teraflops in theory.
Well, according to AMD via The Verge, it says here in this Ars Technica article, as we go layers and layers deep, the Z1 can run games about 55% faster than a Steam Deck. And then there's the Z1 Extreme on top of that, or Z1, depending on where you live. Maybe it's the Z1 for you, the Z1 Spectrum. But I think this is kind of, it'll be mitigated somewhat by the fact that these new systems that'll be coming out and all of their clones will all have higher resolution displays than the Steam Deck. And so you're going to be gaming at higher resolutions, theoretically. And
it's relatively slow DDR5 that will be attached to it, so it shouldn't burst into fire like your previous story.
No.
Well, the TDP on the Extreme is only up to 30, so there you go.
Yeah.
And 12, it matches the compute units from their previous one for RDNA 2, so it's on the high-end one, it's 12 compute units. 12 CUs on the Extreme.
It'll be interesting to see if the memory is what kind of cripples the Extreme. Not cripple, but not make it as good as it could be.
Right. Yeah, that was pointed out in the article that memory bandwidth, it's not scaling quite as linearly as you might think, because at some point you just run out of bandwidth. For example, Grand Theft Auto 5, there's almost no performance uplift at all going from the Z1 to the Z1 Extreme. Same with Dota 2. I mean, you're already up against a limit there. Maybe that's like a CPU limitation, but who knows? Games like that are more CPU bound because they're so easy to drive. But like CS.
And what's interesting as well is this is a 4-nanometer product.
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
Also not an April Fool's joke.
Yeah. So whether or not it's, a full 4-nanometer or some kind of strange little, AMD only from TSMC, like NVIDIA has a 4-nanometer process, which is optimized for them. I don't know. We don't have all of the details yet. Again, no speeds and feeds. But it is it's an extremely competent SoC in terms of not only CPU power, but also graphics. So we've got one handheld that's going to be doing that. We may see others. And it's kind of funny to think that, the people at Valve worked with the AMD semi-custom to develop their specialized CPU, and a year and a half later, we get a non-specialized CPU that is available for general purpose, and it's going to be interesting to see what other handheld people will do with this technology and what kind of tricks that they can do to kind of
How long before
give themselves an
AMD
advantage.
2.0?
Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely
wonder if
have
this-
a chance to gain some market share here because
Yeah.
NVIDIA, when was the last time they updated their mobile compute platform? The one that drives the Nintendo Switch, for example. That's years old and significantly...
Tegra, I
Yeah.
don't remember which version it was.
Tegra 4.5.
Or I'm thinking, but it was a while back.
NVIDIA or AMD can swoop in, and they have this high-powered... They're talking about the specs that with the Ally, the specs that we're going to see, I'm sure, mirrored with many different manufacturers with this type of device, is a 7-inch 1080p screen, 500 nit brightness, 120 hertz refresh rate. So very much more a premium experience, but that will eat into a lot of those performance improvements. But the chip can handle it. I mean, clearly, if this is, especially the extreme version of these, the higher performance part, but we'll have...
Boy, you got to wonder how long that battery's going to last.
Yeah, that's the question.
120 hertz, 500 nits, or 700 nits? I don't know. But yeah, it's going to eat it up. You're probably going to want these plugged in most of the time.
But I mean, look at this. Don't you want this device? Look at the lines,
After I turned 50, I wanted to start getting rid of some things. So the children were first. The voodoo cards will be last.
Oh,
Yes.
good.
Priorities.
Yeah. So let's talk about MSI. I hear that they unlaunched a Super 3060 Ti. I don't know a whole lot about this one. So if someone else could talk, expound upon.
It doesn't exist. Don't worry
Last
about it.
week,
Well,
we
not
talked about the
anymore.
fact that
We
MSI
did.
was launching a 3060 Ti Super 3X. But apparently,
Yeah, but it was a
Super-
3060 Ti Super, not
but not a super, because of course that's an NVIDIA designation for a higher end chip that isn't a Ti. Obviously, this was a bad idea, and NVIDIA said no, you can't do that. It's according to this report here at videocards.com. NVIDIA wasn't happy with the product name chosen by MSI. Really?
Shocking.
So a week after its launch, it has been unlaunched.
But was it really launched, or did they just sort of paper, we're going to this?
If Alex was still at MSI, this wouldn't have happened.
It's true.
And he would have said the all new 3060 Ti, and everybody would know that it's the all new 3060 Ti Supreme.
Yeah.
But no.
And we feel super about it.
That's the difference between super and super.
Exactly.
Super.
Super pipe. You need to get back to the super pipe. Product marketing people.
Pay attention.
Pay mind.
Hey, listen to our podcast. We said it was a bad idea last week. Boom, unlaunched. That's the power. That's the influence that we have.
Yeah. I think it's happened more than
Sebastian's
once.
got their ear. He's got their ear.
It's just
And
the reach.
unfortunately, they've got sheriff's deputies out with warrants looking for their ear. No. Anyway, shall we then go on?
This next story could be low-key one of the biggest stories of the month, easily. AMD has made a lot of noise. We talked about this. Are you an enthusiast, they ask? And do you have 16 gigabytes of memory or more? Do they have the stones to release a product in current year with an insufficient amount of VRAM? So obviously the rumors about the 4060 Ti only being 8 gigabytes, that's just ludicrous. In current year, 8 gigabytes? GTFO. Well, according to this rumor, also at videocards.com with a Z, by the way, it's videocards. Radeon RX 7600 XT finally has a release date. This is tagged as a rumor. AMD has notified board partners about the upcoming embargo schedule for the next Radeon desktop update. Now, according to this table here, 7600 XT is Navi 33 based, 32 CUs, 8...
Negative 2.6 gigahertz.
Somewhere in that region. 8 gigabytes of 128-bit GDDR6, I'm assuming, but only 8 gigabytes.
Oh.
Is that acceptable?
Yeah.
Are you an enthusiast if you buy a 7600 XT? AMD says no. I guess it's their mainstream option. I better be $200.
It's not going to be $200, but it is going to replace the 6600 because the 6600 has done pretty well, and it's a cost-effective part. And as long as you didn't enable ray tracing, it was a really good 1080 board. And the 7600 XT supposedly is around 11 to 15% faster than that, but actually pull around the same, if not a little less power. And so you're going to get kind of next generation, RDNA 3 performance. It's going to be interesting to see if this is a monolithic die or if they will continue with the chiplets with a smaller core die. We don't know a lot of these details yet.
I think
but
it's monolithic. I thought chiplet was only the 7900 series, but I could be wrong.
I mean, it's scalable.
It is. And speaking of scalable, they could easily scale up the memory on the same controller and do 16 gigabytes. They could pull an NVIDIA and have a 7600 XT 8 gigabyte and a 7600 XT 16 gigabyte version.
Oh, I'll tell you though,
they've done that before.
We're
they
at
did
a
the 4
really
gig and
strange
the 8 gig for the 4080 and the 580. Sorry,
they did.
We're in a really strange spot for. I'm sorry, I'm just going to make this for memory in terms of price and capacity and what people, namely developers, are doing with current titles. The amount of optimization on a lot of these latest titles are not fantastic, especially stuff ported over to PC. I think, what was the latest game that was announced in the last couple of days that people have been testing? I mean, Last of Us has been a bad thing. There was another one that I can't remember. The new Jedi one.
Oh, yeah.
It's eating 16 to 20 gigs of memory I mean, you're getting less than 60 frames per second gameplay with top-end cards. It's not great. So, we're in a very, very strange... What's that?
Apparently it's over 100 gigs install as well.
Yeah, it's big. But there's a lot of optimization to be done. And you're not going to be doing 16 gigs of memory on a $220 to $260 product. You're going to have to deal with that 8 gig. And that's just the way it is. And they're going to have to eat some crow talking about it. But until you get over the $300 mark, you'll see the 12 gig and above. And there just seem to be some hard limits there. But otherwise, it's great to see some new offerings in the low end that will be for the same price as the current low end, or at least we think so, but still outperform them by a significant amount. Is this not good news? Are you not entertained? And speaking of more rumors, and we mentioned this quickly during our previous conversation about the RX 7600 XT, NVIDIA may be releasing the RTX 4060 Ti and priced at a much more reasonable $399, which is the same pricing of the original 3060 Ti back 2.5 years ago, but featuring 37 Ti performance.
Almost sounds like the 4070 for 600 with 3080 performance, except, of course, we never had a $400, $500 3080.
There's an expected lineup series, a spec chart down below there, so you can jump to that. I can scroll a little bit. Base clock is up above the 4070, interestingly enough.
Oh, come on. Only 76 billion transistors.
But the real problem here...
The dreaded 8 gigabytes.
Exactly. The only thing you're going to see in any comment section is the VRAM. 8 gigabytes for $400 in current year?
The other thing you're going to see is the 128-bit bus, because it is 3+-ish gigabits per second behind its brethren.
Yeah, but the magic
of 96-bit bus in a long time.
As AMD has instructed us, because they released a 64-bit product a couple years ago. Remember that? It's not just about the memory interface. A lot of it has to do with the cache. And they have fattened up that cache with this 40 series. It is significantly higher than the 30 series was. I think that's why they're getting away with
behind me, bus width. Yeah. Get behind me.
Bus width. Who cares about bus width? We've got all this level 2 cache.
Well, they've got their little cache that they're.
But what if it was really, really low latency? Screw bandwidth, just really good low latency.
And obviously it works. How on earth could a 4070 with a 192-bit bus consistently perform right there with a 3080
with a 320-bit bus?
So it's ridiculous, but it's the power of the architecture, the cache.
Gosh, you mean the design actually means something and they can do things to kind of optimize that over a couple of years? Shocking.
Yeah.
Shocking.
The $399 price point is going to bring them all to the yard, so I think that could be a winning ticket for them.
I like this.
It's all those millions and millions of hours of simulation.
How much RAM?
So
people have unrealistic expectations, unfortunately, when it comes to what their dollar can buy in current
What else
year.
is new?
Maybe you think that $399 is too much for this card, but $399 is like $249.
It's all bill of materials. It's the BOM of any card. It's not like, I mean, a year and a half ago, NVIDIA was hitting the plus 60% margins. We're going to find out soon with their results that they are not at that 60% anymore, especially in the consumer GPU area. And I'm not trying to make excuses for them. A lot of people think that they're, the absolute rat bastards in terms of, we're going to charge as much as I want. And certainly when you look at the 4080, you get that impression because there's no way that should be a $1,200 card. However, when we start getting down to the 4070 non-TI, we do see the compression of how much it actually costs for that chip, how much it costs to the memory. And, PCB board costs are not that much, but the components sitting on that PCB, it's still a cutting edge part in terms of voltage regulation and whatnot. And you need extra, it's going to be more expensive. And so I don't know what the lowest price you could do for a 4070. People would be like, this needs to be $400 card. I don't know if margins could actually meet that, because we're starting to get compressed just because, inflation is a thing and stuff is more expensive to produce than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So it's a hard play. We'll find out more as we get quarterly reports from these guys to where it actually sits. I don't think they're being as horrible as we expect them to be, especially at the lower end. But at the same time, there could be some leeway to give us some more options at a more palatable price. It's a weird market. It is a weird market.
You've got Intel. If you want inexpensive graphics with a lot of VRAM, you can get an A770
for $349, and I think that is one of the best deals on the market now, under $400. And they just released a new driver set, and they're improving overall performance. Again, another step with this latest one. But now we can move along to getting vintage with it. Getting vintage with it.
I think Sebastian should take his load of old parts and just take them to one of these shows and just leave them behind.
Leave them behind?
Leave them behind.
What are you talking about?
Get them out of your life.
Yeah. Brett,
they're not doing you any good.
You can buy new ones there. You could buy more vintage.
Yeah, that's right.
There.
A lot
they
of
have
people
a
probably have
it's
like a swap meet. You go to these vintage computer shows, and people buy stuff and sell it.
Maybe you could swap yours for something that worked.
What I should do is swap some of mine for cold hard cash, but that would be a practical thing to have. But
and I mean, Jersey isn't that far away from you.
It's pretty far. But
they
have a Midwest Computer Festival too. I don't have to drive that far to go to one of these.
I like how you preface this was an actual reason to go to New Jersey. Yes, which is what he said.
I know. I don't know about that.
Hey, I mean,
I just said that it wasn't.
They don't call it the Garden State for nothing. You know, you stay out of Newark, and it's a lovely state. And stay off the tollways as well. But yeah.
Anyway, this was Jeremy's feel-good story of the week, so I thought we would bring this in.
No, it looks wonderful. Like there's a lot of memories sitting there, and some that even predate me, or at least being able to play with them. And so apparently he spent several hours there, and of course, because it is a vintage computer festival, the computer systems went down, so they couldn't buy anything or buy food or anything. So someone actually managed to jury-rig the modern stuff to work again. I don't know that it involved hooking up a VIC-20 to everything again, but it's possible. But it's interesting, and apparently this is only like a tenth of the pictures or so that he took. So at Hackaday, you'll probably see even more posts from it. But it's like just stacks and stacks of memories. There's a lot of fun stuff in there if you grew up that way.
Stacks and stacks of memories.
Because you used to stack your memory.
Yes, those curved-shaped Silicon Graphic desktop workstations, as in a picture, flow by.
The indigo.
And everything is that perfect tobacco-stained color.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You just need a little electro brightening.
Yeah.
Retro bright.
Yes. You know, I've heard that if you heat that plastic,
supposedly,
that the oils and stuff kind of come to the surface, and you get that. But you have to use like a propane torch, and you have to use a light touch.
Carefully.
Otherwise, it's bad. Don't do this at home, kids. Disclaimer.
Brought to you by the generation that figured out that if you put a motherboard with some loose soldering on it and through a low cycle on the dishwasher, it will actually
reflow,
fix a lot of those connections. Yeah.
Mm.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And now it is time on our show to pause for our dearly beloved sponsor.
As a software engineer, it's not always straightforward to find just the right place to practice your craft. People like us can often find it difficult to settle into just the right role for our careers. Well, consider Bloomberg. They're out there working to build a top-notch information network for financial professionals, and they're looking for engineers to join their team. Personally, I know that I've always wanted to work on challenging projects that had real impact on actual shipping products and services, but sometimes that has just not worked out. While I've not yet worked for Bloomberg, they're forward-looking and are building tools their clients will come to rely on for systems that matter in solving real-world complex problems across global capital markets. They're working in real-time market and enterprise data with sophisticated analytics that are touched by over 350,000 financial professionals. Bloomberg systems operate at tremendous scale, with over 300 billion, yes, B as in billion, market messages daily. So many of you will already be up to speed on the majority of Bloomberg software, as is built in C++, JavaScript, and Python. So you're obviously not going to get locked into a proprietary shop, as Bloomberg's engineers are active members of the open source community in both leveraging and making commits back to many projects. Learn more about the opportunities that await you by visiting Bloomberg.com/careers. That's Bloomberg.com/careers.
All right, Jeremy, this is your time to shine. This is a quick look at the Monoprice wireless web meeting headset. And if I keep talking like this and lower my voice, then maybe I can start. Never mind. I don't want to talk like that person.
Oh.
Make sure you insert it carefully and very,
fully.
very hard. So it's Monoprice designed this for Teams meetings, for Zoom meetings, for everything like that, and are selling it, at a relatively decent price. It's never over $50. It's often on sale for below. I started using this last Wednesday at work. No one noticed that I changed from the SH80, the Corsair, and I haven't charged it. I've been using it for a week now. I have not bothered to charge it because the Bluetooth comes with a wonderful little sleep setting where they're saying 125 hours. I'm thinking I'm not doubting them because literally have not charged this since the initial 2 hours. And I'm talking, I don't know, average of 4 hours, 4.5 hours a day. Plus it's just constantly on. So, it's not gorgeous.
Hey, it's pleather though.
The pleather is quite nice too. Mm-hmm. It's slightly smaller than I'd like. Like the boom is not quite long enough to reach my mouth, so I have to push it forward a little bit on my head. Not uncomfortably, but not too bad. And the ear cups, again, are a little bit small, but then, I'm sitting in the big and large chair and, I'm not exactly a small person. The most amusing thing about this, other than it works for a meeting headset, is that they've got what they call a surround button. And so it tries to do sort of virtual surround, and it's literally a Dr. Dre Beats button. Do you remember those? The ones with just like obscene amounts of bass, like to the point where there's almost a little bit of reverb going on. That's what it does. So if you're in the middle of a boring meeting and you just like, I don't know what the heck to do, just turn that button on. Everyone's voice drops like almost an octave, and you get some reverb going, and it's a little bit funny. The other nice thing about him is the connectivity on it. The HS80s, if I get bored in a meeting and I wander off to the fridge and I go, start prepping something for dinner or something as people are blathering on, those would drop. I would get blinks in and out. These things do not care. They have a perfectly solid connection. They do not drop anything. So if you're looking for a pair of headphones that you just can ignore and you just use them at work and you don't want to think about them, and they squish down so that you can fit them in a bag or anything, and the headband protects them relatively nicely, and yoink, that mic comes off, so you don't have to worry about it. I don't know. For that sort of money, I'm even considering talking to my procurement guys, because that's about what we're paying for the Jabbras, and I hate those Jabbras. They're awful.
Jabbra's the worst audio quality. Seriously.
They're just not good.
Terrible.
It has wired connectivity.
We bought like the $350 Jabra kind of desk.
The conference shite ones. Oh man,
they're awful. The audio quality.
There's so many of them.
Yeah, terrible. That people give them away because, yeah. No, this sounds like
comfort after. How's the comfort after 3 hours of wearing?
Fine. It's a nice spacious headband. A little bit of padding on it, if you can see that. And it's plastic. It's super lightweight. Like there's plastic, but they were smart enough to put a little bit of metal for the extension, and and you can see on the other side there, for the hinge is actually metal reinforced. But other than that, it's plastic and pleather. They weigh almost nothing. And
will they run wired if you had to?
Yes.
Oh.
And if you're stuck on a desktop, they actually come with a dongle. So if you don't have Bluetooth connectivity, you can do the dongle. The problem with that is that now you've got like a hard limit of about 26 hours worth of battery, because instead of being able to go to sleep, it's constantly talking back and forth to the dongle.
God, which still 6 hours
is still a week's worth of work. It's hope BT5. To remember to plug them in on Friday.
So it's got a slightly extended frequency and range, so that's probably why it works better than your other set.
Yes, it does. So, I mean, it's literally you put them on Monday, you forget them out, you keep work on Friday, try and remember to plug them in to recharge. If you don't worry about it. They'll still be working on Monday.
Well, that is a glowing seal of approval from Jeremy.
The most exciting product you could possibly get.
Yeah.
Meeting headphones.
Just say sorry once.
Eh?
Exactly. We're moving on to Security Corner, otherwise known as I'm going to raise your blood pressure 20 points if you're a sysadmin or a network admin or even just help desk, because the things coming your way are unending. It's like piranhas through murky water. Just, they're there, going to chunk off piece by piece skin and just...
This trio of Security Corner stories is themed. It's all about remote code execution tonight, folks. Stay with us.
Who's got this one? Because I don't. Because it gives me ulcers.
Well, this is about Apache, who puts out a server people may have heard of. They put out a server that helps run the Flask environment. People may not have heard of Flask. It's a server-side way to build web applications. Now, like many environments, when you build a back-end service to run programs, it comes with a variety of configuration options that they suggest you change. Some of them include keys. You would not be surprised to learn that many thousands of servers out there never changed their quote-unquote Flask secret key. There are at least a couple of thousands that never changed their Flask secret key, and they are susceptible to a remote code execution because you can pretend to be a remote admin session and completely own the service.
So they let the genie out of the bottle.
They sure did, and they tried to fix this a little bit in I think it was 2022 or so, where they started to put up a secret key warning. You must change this, and the same roughly number of servers were still affected after a period of time. They've new version. They won't even start, but that doesn't help the thousands of websites that are already out there that are already defaulting to start up with quote unquote secret key as its random phrase to seed the generation of session keys and the like. So unfortunately, it's fairly easy to become a fully authenticated admin against these services, and they show no inclination of actually fixing them at this point.
Yeah.
Oh, and these are institutions and news agencies and just.
But don't worry,
fry.
Because they don't even have to be hacked. They can just be taken down because their bloody UPS won't work anymore.
Oh, that's the next story.
Yeah.
Ooh.
No, this is the one that gets me because APC, who no one has ever heard of, their smart ups are vulnerable to it's a combo of a denial of service and a remote code execution. Because why go for one when you can have two? So all of a sudden you can not only disable the UPS's ability to do what it's supposed to do, you can disable the monitoring and the ability to remotely turn it back on again, which is why you paid all the extra money for the smart UPS. And this is the thing, it's like denial of service is kind of annoying most of the time, but when it's literally stopping you from rebooting everything in the office so that you actually have to go in and manually turn the UPS back on that's already kind of a little bit screwed up because they can just take it down again. It's like you need to either upgrade to their PowerShoot, which I believe has a licensing fee involved with it.
Yep, I think it does.
Yeah. Or you just sort of turn your remote admin off because that's great.
So their free software is susceptible to a security code or an RCE, while the paid version is not.
Is not.
Interesting incentive. Incentive there.
Upgrade or else.
Mm-hmm. Well, that makes everyone happy. But you know what makes me even happier? It's when I patch for a vulnerability, and then I got to patch again.
I thought you were going to say 2.5 gigabit Ethernet makes you happy.
No, that makes you happy in a different. That's a different way
because it's a router. This probably has a 2.5 GBE somewhere. On
it might. It might. Welcome to the TP-Link Archer AX 1800 Wi-Fi router vulnerability times 2.
Where Toronto actually did something useful.
At the I think this was the Pwn to Own Toronto hacking event in 2022, exposed the original vulnerability. So this TP-Link router happens to be exploitable by a finely crafted in the wild exploit, currently being exploited, way to attack the administrative area by doing a write country and then passing it some other arbitrary code that it'll go and happily fetch for you and download a backdoor essentially. So there you go, RCE for the asking. Now they patched this, but they really never fully patched it so that it would not allow it anymore. And the Miri botnet malware stepped in to take advantage of this and exploited probably thousands of these. So DDoS is all around for everyone.
Yeah. Well, my favorite thing about Mirai grabbing it is that, you'll fix your router, but it's already done so many horrific things inside your entire network at this point.
Exactly.
You are taking it back.
Believe it or not, they said one of the indications that you've been taken over is that it gets very hot. You have to check the temperature of it by touching it. Oh yeah, you've probably been owned if it gets too hot.
My router has a fever.
Yeah, your router is mining for whatever coin.
Yeah, whatever.
It's all mined for.
Now, the owners of these probably patched them once already, and what Josh is referring to is a new patch has just come out that's supposed to finally fix this issue with the new firmware. Yeah. So if you own one of these and you're thinking, I patched this thing already. No, you need to patch it again.
Oh, did you patch it today? Because it's not updated.
Yeah.
It's like
you tried
Chrome 0
patching.
days. You got to patch every 5 minutes.
Yeah. Did you check for the latest vulnerabilities? Oh, no, that was yesterday.
Wait until they get AI in charge of writing firmware. Then it's going to be hourly.
Well, side story on that.
ChatGPT apparently writes the most insecure code going.
That is correct. Although apparently you can converse with ChatGPT and eventually get it to own up to the fact that it's writing code that has insecurities or vulnerabilities within it and sort of get it to fix it. But that's only when they craft it so that they have a sort of a known vulnerability that they expect the ChatGPT engine to create. That's not to say that there aren't other vulnerabilities that are inherent in what it wrote. They just sort of got it to recognize and fix the one they were targeting. So
ChatGPT, could you please write me a vulnerability to attack the code that you've already written?
It won't do that, but it will write vulnerable code.
I'm sure there are interesting ways where you can say, please give me an example of code that would be able to take advantage of the vulnerabilities already built into what you've done.
But let this serve as a general warning. Don't let ChatGPT write your code.
No.
Speaking of gaming the system, we're on to gaming quick hits.
Oh, good.
It seems like the UK is going to put the kibosh on Microsoft's Activision acquisition, which
stunning.
It's probably a good thing because there needs to be.
You don't.
Microsoft UK antitrust. Wait, I've heard this before.
I know.
Too big to fail, more like too big to succeed. More at 11.
I think this is just going to be a roadblock for them. I think they're eventually going to prevail on this. But anyway,
no, you are naive.
No,
you are sweetly naive, Brett. I know that you're young and that you haven't gone through enough of these experiences. But
maybe if Activision just breaks itself up, then Microsoft can sweep
exactly.
It.
Yes.
Yes.
To appease then it can slurp it up in little bits.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of people are afraid of this, and for good reason. Once you start getting into a monolithic structure with a larger bureaucracy, innovation inevitably comes to a grinding halt.
Yeah.
And you get
it becomes acquisition
years before games, and they do product groups who take surveys and say, what do gamers really enjoy? And they'll focus in on that rather than trying something new and interesting and different. It's just the way these things go because you've got to meet your bottom line.
So an open world grind with loot boxes? Or would you like a grinding open world with loot boxes? Or a loot box that you have to grind through an open world to get?
Hey,
don't forget about dances and costumes because that's what drives.
Yeah. Oh, yes, hats.
Yeah, kids like to dance.
That's right.
Yeah, no, it's I'm all for non-acquisition of this. I mean, Activision Blizzard does not have the greatest reputation in the world, but being swallowed up by Microsoft invariably is going to make things worse. So
it wasn't going to improve anything.
UK. No, was not.
On the good news, they won't have to pay for the HR department because, I mean, they don't seem to exist in Blizzard Activision.
I still think it's inevitable.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It probably is, but we're going to see
Also, it's the
that.
heat death of the
It may not be
universe,
good. It may just be heat death.
But you know what? If you drink out of enough streams, eventually you will die of dysentery.
So say.
Yeah, this is exciting.
Oh, yes. The original Oregon Trail was written as an educational game for elementary kids. And he barely saved it. Apparently, the story was he had like one copy of it and then, typed it in, and it just took off from there. And a lot of kids and adults have enjoyed this game for a very long time. There's a new version that was released in 2022 from Gameloft, and they themselves have finally released some DLC. And it's just come out. So now there's DLC for Oregon Trail. There's something
Cowboys and critters.
Interesting to say about that. I think there's some new quests that they've added. There was something else. A cooking system. Where you can so topical, where you can create healthy meals so that you can live a longer and healthy virtual life.
Until you die of dysentery.
Or at the river. And you drown.
You usually drown at the river. But no, it's interesting because, I grew up on this, and there was a Canadian version. That instead of being the Chisholm Trail, it was the Bartletts, who were settling up Upper Canada. But it was the same sort of a game. And this, kids these days will never even look at it because, first of all, it was mostly text. Although this one looks like it's a little more graphical. But I suspect
the updated one got a little bit more.
But I do kind of want to play this.
Oddly enough, we have one review, mostly. Some memory. Sebastian.
Mostly.
All right, real quick. Lexar, you may have heard of them. Last time we looked at a kit from Lexar, it was DDR4 3600, so that perfect one-to-one match for your Ryzen 5000 processor. Well, this is DDR5 6000, so you'd think tailor-made for Ryzen 7000. Plus, I discovered it has Hynix M die ICs, which apparently means something to people who care about the IC that is inside of the memory. We're on to the God of War now with Ares. Before we had Hades, the god of
your previous Lexar kit was a lot simpler looking, wasn't it?
Yeah, so this is a little bit more complex looking, but you know what? It's not all about the looks. It's what's underneath. And by the way, this has a nice brushed aluminum heat spreader.
Oh, it is nice.
In person, it doesn't look as ostentatious as it does in the product photos. Like, this is pretty plain looking, except for that bar at the top. It's RGB memory, of course.
If you just go back to that real quick, the all of the different fonts are really, they're kind of coming at me in such a way that I'm finding it.
Leave it to Brett to point out the inconsistency with the product fonts. But you're right. DDR5 is in one of those old 7-segment display type fonts.
Yeah.
Lexar
logo
is a sans serif modern font. It looks like Helvetica.
Yeah, but something it's that stylized X,
And then Ares, you're back to this sort of neo-futuristic segmented font again. A lot going on there.
It's discordant.
Can we talk about something meaningful, though?
Because
as valid as it is to critique,
will it boot up in an upgraded AMD system?
Okay. You know how we were talking about Ryzen and memory voltage earlier?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's look at the
Does this go up to 1.45? Will it instantly ignite your Ryzen CPU in a flash of magnesium light?
Look at the VDD.
If you look at the,
oh my god, it does go to 1.4.
If you the back of the package says VDD 1.4 volts.
Ooh,
not anymore.
But if you look at the modules themselves, now they said this to me before launch. This is only 1.3. They actually programmed the memory to only operate at 1.3 under Expo.
Good.
And here's a look at the readout from Typhoon Burner, one of the DEMs. There's the 16 gigabit MDI. Where does it say here? You have the Expo certification at 1.30 volts. Same
good.
XMP.
Good.
And I was going to test this on the AM5 platform, but unfortunately, outside of stock like default DDR5 4800 CL40, I could not get the system to post with this memory. It is not on the QVL, and I updated the BIOS, and it still wasn't on the QVL. This is pre-release memory, but I feel like these Hynix ICs are well established enough at this point. I don't know what's going on, but
Maybe it's the controller.
What's that?
Maybe it's the controller.
It could be, because when I put these into the Intel Z690 test platform, of course, XMP, one click, they worked perfectly. But look at what the type of memory is displayed here as DDR5 7666. So there could be something wrong with my sample, I think. But it did load the XMP profile successfully, so it's 3000 as the actual frequency, and then it's 34, 38, 38, 76. By the way, memory, if you want to test your memory, there's the AIDA64 benchmark, of course, which will show you scaling, but not in any kind of realistic way. And then I always like to test 7-zip. And 7-zip, I tested a DDR5 6200 CL36 that I had on the Z690 platform. And the difference between 6200 CL36 and 6000 CL34, like this Lexar kit, is basically
I'm hurting my eyes trying to squint here.
It's virtually the same in
That's a difference you can't feel.
Usage. So I mean, they're faster than 4800 kits, but I feel like this kind of kit, 6000, that is the sweet spot for Ryzen. So hopefully, this Expo profile is recognized on other boards. Anyway, they're trying to establish themselves as a memory brand, not just a storage brand. And this is on Amazon for, I think it's $150. It'll be discounted just like the last time. So that's the list price is $150 for a 32 gigabyte 6000 CL34 kit. So not the most competitive price, but it's not bad. They look fine. This is all you can see when it's installed in a system anyway, just the top bars. So you don't have to worry about those fonts, Brett.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can't read anything else.
And why put them on there? They look fine. They look good.
Well, thanks for taking the time and doing that review, Sebastian, because you keep us afloat.
Thanks for remembering that review, Josh.
Expo 1.3.
Yes.
Yeah. You know what time it is?
Hammer time.
I don't have parachute pants.
Oh, okay.
No, it's picks of the week. You know who's up first? Me. Why? Because I'm important. Do you know why I'm important? Because I make good picks. Sebastian, do you have a pick? Didn't think so.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's been a while. I reviewed these ages ago, but Grado, if you ever wanted to get into the Grado sound, the new SR60X has their latest 4th gen drivers in their very, budget-oriented $99 set of headphones. Now, the SR60s have been, legendary, really, for the past 15 years of offering very competitive sound for a very low price. So if you're ever interested in seeing what Grados are about, then this is an excellent beginning point for you. I mean, they're on ear. Some people like it, some people don't. They're open ear. Again, if you're in a noisy environment, you're probably not going to like them. But if you're in a non-noisy, noisy environment.
Both. Either one.
Yeah, exactly. You're probably going to like them. I mean, they're very airy. They have great mid-range and bass. Really, they are structured more towards voices. So if you're really into, a lot of vocals and chorus and stuff like that, you still have all that low end at the same time. And it doesn't have an annoying treble that sometimes, when you're listening and you become very, very exhausted on that sometimes is the higher end being overrepresented. And these don't do that. So if you want to see what Grados are like, less than $100, and you can find out. And it may lead you on a lifetime journey of audio exploration with the Grado package. So there you go.
And they're made in the USA.
60Xs. There, Brooklyn. Well, wait, I think the 60s are not.
What?
Really? The 60s they've outsourced?
Yeah, they've been outsourced to East Asia for quite a while.
I thought we were at war
but
with
the
East
80s
Asia.
and above, I think, are all...
We've always been at war with East Asia.
Exactly. Jeremy.
Well, I was going to go with Beyond Blue, which is free on the Epic Game Store, but I mean, that's not terribly exciting or anything. Good game, though. If you like ecological stuff and watching humpback whales sleep, it's fun. But I was sniffing around, and hey, if you're desperate for a GPU right now in Canada, because our prices are not quite the same as they are below the belt, there is a nice deal right now at Memory Express where you can get a 6750 XT Mech 2X, 12 gigabyte overclocked. Not the most amazing video card, but is it worth about $500? Yeah, I think it is. If you're going to, because otherwise you're going to be paying twice that much for an impressive video card. So being able to get something that will do what it wants, and you're not going to be throttled by memory, because 8 gigs would probably do you, but the problem is that most of those cheaper cards are 4 gigs, and that's just nasty. So hey, if you're desperate, go for it. If you're not, hold on, because prices seem to be coming down. It's really
MSI
nice.
makes a pretty solid card.
They do, and the Mac is a good series.
Of them back in the day, and they have some pretty good build of what they do.
They just honored an RMA on my 6800 XT.
Oh, sweet!
Which is like 6 months out of being out of warranty. So yeah, no, MSI is a good company.
It's working.
There are some that are annoying, but
all right, Brett, you now.
If I've said it once, I've said it 3 times probably. I'm all about the power. A couple of weeks ago, I talked about portable power units and being able to go on the road with these really cool new portable power units with the lithium-ion batteries in them for USB power, lighting, and all the way up to 110 volts AC. And they've gotten fairly inexpensive and relatively affordable and long-lasting for taking into the field. Well, when you're out there for a period of time, how are you going to recharge them? Probably solar. So I looked around, found a few solar kits, and I have one of these battery packs, got myself a solar kit. But I was looking around tonight because I hadn't mentioned it. Like, I found this. $169 for a 100-watt solar panel isn't that bad. This particular one is 50% off. 50% off. And it's 4 25-watt panels. Now, this one might be a little bit more setup time because you have to kind of wire them together. So there's a little bit more hands-on cabling in order to get them to work. But the nice thing about them is you could set them up 25 watts at a time. And each one of their carry handles has USB and output plugs on them. So if you wanted to just charge a USB device with nothing else, boom, there's a picture of the handle right there. And they have digital readouts as well as the capability to plug them into the next 25-watt panel. And it comes with a set of 4 for a full 100-watt potential, and a variety of different plugs to get them plugged into your battery pack of choice, or rewire it to whatever input your battery pack needs. But it's 50%
for the next time
off.
That you're on the Kessel Run. And
For the next time I'm on the Kessel Run. Yep.
But if they chime together, do they make stormy weather and lightning? You're not familiar with that limerick?
I am not at the moment. I was giving you a chime. I'm just not going to say it
because we had a sponsor tonight.
Well,
yes, please don't.
No, won't that be a fun Google surprise for you?
Hey, can you choose to hook them up in parallel or serial, or can you only do parallel?
Anyway. I think they've come with the plug so they can just add additional wattage, but not voltage.
Okay.
I have a pick.
So, I'm saying this with bated breath, Sebastian, do you have a pick?
Can you not hear me?
I think we're all waiting.
Now I can.
Okay,
We can hear you.
I've been saying I've got a pick. And it's installed in the system down here, so you can't really see it. So I'll have to add some B-roll.
Oh.
Although I do have the lid of the accessories shoebox.
Dark Power!
Be Quiet sent the Dark Power 13. I've got a video that I'm working on, just a quick introduction to this product kind of video. And what's remarkable about this product is not that it's a power supply, because we've seen power supplies before. In fact, you're probably all using one in your PC.
It feels like velvet, right?
The box has a soft touch, Josh. You can't feel it through the camera.
Oh, I can see it though.
But it's a soft touch.
I can't smell it either, but it looks
box, which is upside down. But yes, anyway, but we're not talking about the box.
Premium.
We're talking about the fact that this product, there's this interesting little entry in the owner's manual, which you probably can't read.
Can't.
But it's about the overclocking key. Yes, this power supply, it comes with a jumper for permanent overclocking, and it has a backplate with a switch. And you can overclock your power supply. No, but it doesn't actually overclock it. Doesn't turn an 850 into a 1000. But it does change it
goes from 60 hertz to 68 hertz?
No, it changes it from multi-rail to single 12-volt rail.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
So it has 4 12-volt rails by default, or just make it one big fat rail. And
you lose a little efficiency, but you're not gonna like reset your system because one rail is pulling too much.
Exactly. But I have tested this. This is only the 850 that they sent me, and I have a 4090 and a 7950X. No problem.
And no recabling is necessary. It's just switch it to monolithic 12-volt rail.
Yeah, you could do it with a switch. Yeah. You have to have it turned off. Don't do it while the system is active, please. Power it down, then overclock.
Make the changes.
I'm all about power.
Well, I'm going to be interested to hear about that because I really like the Be Quiet stuff. They make some pretty solid products for those who need the power. Speaking of power,
I can't get PC power and cooling anymore because they're gone.
They are gone. Weren't they bought up by OCZ?
Wasn't it OCZ? And then they're gone.
Yeah.
Who got OCZ?
I can't remember. Toshiba got OCZ.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
but I don't think they're producing power supplies.
No.
It's what it is. All things die. Speaking of which, this podcast is about to die, but thankfully it will be resurrected next week in a new form, more glorious, made glorious by the summer's sun. But I can't talk about that yet because it's still spring and we still have snow on the horizon in multiple areas. But we'd like to thank you for joining us. And I'm shocked that my voice is not cracked under this time because I don't talk as much anymore. But part of that is because I don't think as much either. So you're all lucky. Lucky to join us, and we're lucky to have you. So with that, we'd like to say thank you and have a lovely day.